Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock. There's a little news bouncing around out there that we'll talk about here at the top and then take your questions. Still waiting to see if we have some special surprise guests joining us. We'll see. But if you want to get in and you're on the two-way platform, go ahead and raise your electronic hand. I see some hands up already. We'd love to see more. Always interested in hearing from folks who haven't been part of the platform live before. If you're watching on YouTube for the first time or here on two-way, there's a platform for civil discourse. We're trying to demonstrate that the country's interested in hearing from each other, regardless of what tribe you're in. And so we always ask people to show a presumption of grace to everyone, to be civil. And if you hear somebody saying something that you disagree with, rather than being angry at them or thinking this platform is ridiculous, take the opportunity to learn from them and to understand that the country is going to elect a president, and a lot of people are going to be unhappy with the outcome. And better that we go through this together as a nation and understand each other. As I've said before, Elvis Costello's peace, love, and understanding is one of our mottos here. So we haven't seen President Biden today. We haven't seen the vice president today. So no news on that front, although lots going on with fundraising in Harris World. And whether the people were reluctant Biden donors or boycotting Biden, every indication I have, the donor communities in Manhattan, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in Massachusetts, it's just an extremely fired up group of people who are putting their checkbooks where their desire to beat Donald Trump is. And I've talked to several donors who have long said Kamala Harris will never be president. Joe Biden might have to be the nominee. This was months ago because she can't beat Trump. They are pleased with her performance so far this week, and they now are fully invested in it. And the level of confidence in her in possible victory amongst the donor class and the political class, elected officials, probably outstrips where the data currently shows things. And there'll be more data. There'll be more polls, both battleground state polls and national polls, between now and Sunday. So be on the lookout for that. We'll bring them to you when we have them. But there's going to be more, and there's going to be more private data. And one of the things that's happening on the Republican side is they're looking to refine their message. Both parts of the Republican ticket have been out and about today. At the bottom of the ticket, JD Vance was in Oklahoma raising money. He's been moving around the country, sometimes unannounced, to do fundraising, not uncommon. And he was on Megyn Kelly's show. And if you thought, as some did, perhaps that he would apologize for the hurt that his words caused, if you thought he would try to revise and extend, no, he went full double down, both in terms of the content and in terms of his attitude. And we'll play a little bit of that for you in just a moment, not quite yet. At Mar-a-Lago, President Trump had his meeting with Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu. Statement came out, not the least bit surprising in terms of the characterization from President Trump about the meeting. Here we'll show you the pictures. So there's great South Florida costumes for a summer, blue ties, and I'm sweating just looking at them. Anyway, that nothing surprising happened at that meeting, but it did take place. And the Veep stakes, I don't have any new reporting for you on that. I did make a few calls, even though I'm not super consumed with the story. But I want to talk a little bit more about Governor Shapiro, who I continue to believe is the most likely choice based on everything I heard, and tell you a few things. First of all, one of the reasons that a lot of the donors are attracted to him is he's an adult. I say to people, if you want to understand kind of his attitude towards governing, towards public service, and this is for many people about the highest praise you give somebody, he's a lot like Mitch Daniels. He just believes in governing and doing a good job and earning his paycheck and public service. He also is, I think, the Democrat who's the best at speaking to MAGA of any Democrat I've heard. He believes, as I believe, that demonizing people who support President Trump, whether they're his constituents in Pennsylvania or nationally, is not an effective political strategy, and it's not the way to bring the country or his Commonwealth together. So if you haven't heard him talk about the aspirations, the fears, the political interests of people who support President Trump, go on YouTube and take a look at that stuff. It's much different than Joe Biden talks about it. It's much different than Hillary Clinton talked about it. He would never say deplorables. And it's pretty different than Vice President Harris talks about it. So if he is chosen, it'll be interesting to see how much of that he emphasizes. He is, by all accounts, a very nice guy, but I will tell you, he and particularly his political team are extremely tough. And right now, you're seeing most of the people who are in play to be on the ticket. They're going on cable TV when they're asked to, clearing it with the Harris campaign. But his operation is working it. And I'm not saying the others don't have anybody working it, but his operation, very tough. I say this generically and not disapprovingly. They're Philadelphia Democrats. They're super tough Pennsylvania Democrats. They understand hardball politics. They understand how to get things done. And I wouldn't, as I said, I wouldn't bet on anyone else right now. I continue to hear the Buttigieg thing. I know a lot of Democrats are telling the campaign they think that's a bad idea for a variety of reasons. But until further notice, unless you hear me say otherwise, I continue to say Harris, Shapiro. I'm not sure what they'll do about the national security question there, but as far as I know, as commander in chief of the Pennsylvania National Guard, his Commonwealth has never been invaded by Canada or Mexico, and that's obviously a huge calling card for him. All right, open it up to your questions or comments. There's some folks coming in that I'm going to call on, but I want to start with just hearing from folks whatever's on your mind about any of the topics I raised. Oh, sorry, I need to do one thing first. JD Vance on with Megyn Kelly. We'll play you one bite. It's pretty representative, but he was defiant. He basically said everybody should get a sense of humor. Everybody should grow up. I said what I meant, and here's why. And go ahead and play that one bite that's representative.
I know the media wants to attack me and wants me to back down on this, Megyn, but the simple point that I made is that having children, becoming a father, becoming a mother, I really do think it changes your perspective in a pretty profound way. This is something, of course, we've recognized for hundreds of years in this country, that human civilization has always recognized. But there's a deeper point here, Megyn. It's not a criticism of people who don't have children. I explicitly said in my remarks, despite the fact that media has lied about this, that this is not about criticizing people who, for various reasons, didn't have kids. This is about criticizing the Democratic Party for becoming anti-family and anti-child.
So again, some have criticized the level of discussion we've had about this matter on both the morning meeting and here. I continue to hear from lots of women that they're upset about it. If you look on social media, on X, the reaction to his posture with Megyn Kelly, certainly there's still some people, including conservative women, not liberal media, not pro-choice women who live in Berkeley and Brooklyn, but conservative women who do not like what he said originally and did not like what he said today. Is it millions of people, tens of millions? I don't know, but I know it's not nothing, and we're going to continue to track it. But I think after what he did today, it's pretty clear he's not even going to say, as I thought he might, if my words hurt anybody, I'm sorry. He didn't say anything like that. He was pretty defiant, and that's his style. And again, it rubbed at least some people the wrong way. All right, hands up if you want to ask a question, make a comment, call on lots of folks. And again, I'm waiting for a few that I may bring in. But let's start with, see, two hands raised. So William, you definitely want to get in. Go ahead, William. Unmute yourself and come on in.
Hi, thanks guys. I appreciate this. Yeah, I just want to say, just on JD Vance, I've seen that 700,000 copies of his book have been sold. He's trending #1 on Audible, and 5 million people have watched his movie Hillbilly Elegy. And I really think the point that he's trying to make touches on, like my mom always says to us, like, she wants grandkids. I think it's touching on like a point where a lot of younger people maybe are struggling to buy a home, get into, society, whatever it is. So I really think that that might be one of the points that he's trying to make. And then the last thing I'll say is I feel like I'm kind of living in like an alternate reality with what's going on with, Joe Biden and him stepping down. I don't know if anyone else is feeling this way, but it just kind of feels like, I'm hearing that, Kamala is the next Obama. She's reading off a script, it seems like, for 10, 15 minutes. And, and everyone's just kind of overlooking that our president just kind of was just pushed aside, and we're reading in
Yeah.
October 2021, Nancy Pelosi was pushing him aside. So I don't know. That's just me.
All right.
But
All right. Well,
yeah,
interesting. Let me ask you some stuff. First of all, I just, in a polite and non-confrontational way, I'll remind you her name is pronounced Kamala.
sorry.
Okay. That's all right. No need to apologize. Just in a friendly way, pointing that out to you. Where do you live and who do you plan to vote for?
I live in Manhattan and I plan to vote for Trump. Um, that's one last thing I'll say. I
Yes,
don't
sir.
want to make it like a whole, whatever, but I keep hearing crime is down, crime is down, crime is down. The National Guard was deployed in the subways. Like, I don't go in the subways anymore, or at least as much as I used to. And the park, where I live in the last few years has gotten, it's gotten a lot crazier. And it's with
Yeah.
my own eyes. The McDonald's that I go to, they say crime is down. You'll see 7 crimes in an hour if you just hang out there. I mean, it's I mean, I really do feel like I'm living in an alternate reality. I mean, the
Yeah.
National Guard is being put in the subways. It's, there's crime going on, and
Yeah.
then I'm told it's never been better. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
What
I'm just,
what what William, what do you find most appealing about Vice President Harris as a politician, as a public figure?
you know, I mean, obviously, I mean, I always want to say something positive about somebody. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll just, she's clearly, accomplished. She's our vice president. I mean, she's gotten to where she is based off of, takes a lot to get to become that. So that
Yeah.
has meant something.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
when I look at her record, when I look at the things she has said, and you can juxtapose it just on 2 months before she was announced Joe Biden's vice president. She was on the radio talking about defund the police. She becomes vice president, and then she's backtracking on that point. So I don't really necessarily, and I know that politicians do that. I give them leeway for that. People are allowed to change and shift on their policies. I just, I don't really know if I really trust her. I don't know if I trust this whole process. I think that there's people that are saying that, like, this whole process just seems, I know everyone's telling me it's democratic. This has happened before.
Yeah.
It happened with Lyndon B. Johnson. But I know a lot of people who are saying to me that I'm talking with that this feels just so like manufactured, like, we don't know who, and it's all of a sudden, oh, now she's, this I don't know. And I'll
All right.
just
Well,
say,
hold
I
on.
do think that Trump has been toning down his rhetoric. If you look at, he just did this thing with Bryson DeChambeau called Breaking 50.
Yeah.
It got 8 million hits. It was 3 days ago. It got 8 million hits. He got 500,000 subscribers. And he just, he seems lighter. I know that he went
Okay.
on a
William, hold
little
on.
like
William,
I
hold on
am.
1 second.
Sorry. Goodbye.
Thank you, William.
I'm
That's
talking
okay.
too
No, no,
much.
stay right
Sorry.
there. No, stay right there. Sharon, are you a Trump person or a Biden or a Harris person or something else?
I'm an independent that's
Yeah.
equally voted for both Democrat and Republican.
Yeah. And what, are you going to vote for Harris or Trump or somebody
Um,
else?
Probably going to vote for Trump, not wanting to, but I I just haven't seen anything so far with Harris other than all of us on this call would look good in her position if we had the media applauding us every minute. Like she hasn't been pushed yet. She
All
hasn't
right.
gotten anything other than what flavor of ice cream do you like? And you're wonderful.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second.
Said.
Phil, are you Trump or Harris or something else?
So I'm a never Trump Republican, but that doesn't side with
Yeah.
Democrats.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I just so
Go
Mark, I just
ahead.
wanted to kind of say, I think that this whole JD Vance saga is very familiar to people who remember the 2012 campaign and the binders full of women. I think it's so obvious and transparent, the sort of the messaging machine kind of working together between the media and the Harris campaign to really, really go after this message. And in an era where the gender divide between who we vote for is more than it's probably ever been. The Harris campaign from a political standpoint have picked a really salient issue to really divide men and women on I think it's pretty clear men will hear Vance's comments more differently than women. That all that being said, whatever this political strategy is behind all that, just from a Trump campaign perspective, the one thing that Trump has shown he understands the moderating position on is abortion and his weakness with women. And I just gotta wonder, did they not do due diligence on the Vance well enough? One of the key things for why Burgum potentially lost the VP slot was because he signed a 6-week abortion ban in North Dakota. And I'm just wondering,
Right.
did they not see how Vance tried to position
Yeah.
himself and run his campaign as Senate on Bannon's show, on Charlie
Yeah.
Kirk's show, all these kind of like far
Right.
right adjacent
Yeah.
shows? Did they vet that?
Yeah. Great question. A lot of people wonder that. So just to be clear, William, Sharon, and Phil, you're all voting for Trump, correct? Is that
More
correct?
than likely.
And Phil, you're voting for Trump too?
No. I'm just gonna write in Ben Sass like I've done the
Okay.
previous two
All right.
elections.
All right, Phil, thank you. I'm gonna take you out, Phil, and I'm gonna bring Jessica in and recognize now that we have two folks who are voting for Harris, right? Jessica, you're voting for Harris,
Yeah.
and Charles is voting for Harris. Okay. And Sharon and Sharon's probably
I
voting
am?
for Trump. You're not, Charles? You're not voting for Harris? I thought you were. No?
That's a funny way to spell Harris.
Okay, you're writing it in. All right, Charles, I'm taking you out, and I'm bringing in. Hold on. I'm bringing in Mayhill because I know Mayhill's voting for Harris. All right, Mayhill, you're voting for Harris, correct? Is that correct? Unmute, please, Mayhill.
Why do you think I'm voting for Harris?
I thought you previously said you were. Am I wrong about that?
You're wrong about that.
All right, Mayhill, we'll bring you back. Stand by. I'm looking for another Harris voter. Let's see. Edward, are you voting for Harris? If you've got your hand up and you're voting for Harris, give me a physical thumbs up. You've got your lecture. All right, Edward, here we go. All right. Sorry this is taking so long, but casting is everything. All right, so we've got Jessica who's voting for Harris, Edward who's voting for Harris, William who's voting for Trump, and Sharon who's probably voting for Trump. And we're just going to try something new here. I just want the four of you to talk about the election and why you're supporting the candidate you're supporting. And if you want to ask the other side a question, please do. But just the four of you talk amongst yourselves about how you're feeling about your candidate, the other candidate, the election. Go.
All right.
Edward. Go ahead.
Okay.
Any of you, start it.
Well, I'll just start with what I was raising my hand about is that the whole JD Vance thing, as much as I hate this guy, I think it's a mistake to really focus in on some of these like gaffes that he's made, because I really feel like anybody who would have even considered voting for Trump before is definitely not going to change their vote based on JD Vance. Now, I know we had Katie on, I think it was last night, and she said, well, I'll probably vote RFK or something, but and maybe she will, but if you haven't been sufficiently disturbed by Trump until now, I don't think that's going to do it. But I think what it will do is it makes it harder for Trump supporters who are a little bit like not enthusiastic about him to publicly show their support. And it's a lot like how I felt about Biden when Biden was the candidate. It's like, yeah, I'm going to vote for him, but the things that are going on makes it really hard to like put a sign out. And so I agree with what a lot of people are saying. Like Harris has really not been, tried in any real way. We're running on, enthusiasm. I get it. But, so I know that there's going to be tough spots for her. And this is the best, right? The very beginning and the early stages. But I think that what I think people forget about the average voter, the people that are sort of not paying attention until Labor Day, that group of people, they don't care if she flip-flops on something she did in San Francisco. They don't know what the PRO Act is. They don't know what fracking is. They don't know what's going on in New York subways. And they're really just kind of paying attention to their lives, and then they're going to listen. And I think that ultimately it's the same way people feel, I think maybe about Trump and JD Vance. Because the average person does not understand politics like you professionals do, they go based on who do they trust. If a candidate can make them trust them, then they're going to say, okay, well, whatever they're telling me, I don't fully understand it, but I believe them. And I think that to certain people, JD Vance and Trump are believable. They've decided they believe them. And so no matter what they say, they're going to keep believing them. And with Harris, I do want to maintain some objectivity, but I trust her. She feels trustworthy to me. So I'm going to tend to believe most of whatever she says. I realize that's a bias, but I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Sharon, jump in, please.
The only thing I'm going to say about that is we've seen Kamala Harris as a vice president, and anybody that goes to Europe after one country invades another and explains that Ukraine is a little country and Russia's a big country and the big country invaded the little country, I'm sorry, I'll take Trump any day of the week on that. That was embarrassing as an American.
Mark,
Edward, go ahead. Again, I want the four of you to chat, but
I would say to the other people that are talking, I'm interested in Kamala Harris because of who she is and her experience and her character. She is not an unseasoned executive. She ran a state prosecution office, a district attorney office. I mean, those are seriously large organizations that require leadership, executive leadership. She had a stint in the Senate. She served in a legislative role. And she served as vice president. Whether people agree or disagree with what her positions are, she has experience, and I think that that's going to matter. And frankly, her character, I believe in her, and I believe her. I do not believe anything that Mr. Trump says. Nothing. And JD Vance isn't off to a good start in terms of being connected to the truth in any consistent way either. So those are the reasons that I'm supporting Kamala Harris. I will say, I'm a little concerned about the idea of two prosecutors, like if she picks Shapiro on a ticket. One's enough. A little diversity, I think, would serve her and the country well.
Okay. William, do you want to ask either of the two Harris supporters any questions?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would just I totally get where they're coming from. Like I can put myself in their shoes and, and see or be, turned off.
What do you think they see in your candidate and in theirs?
Well,
how would you explain
what they see?
ultimately
What they see is in their candidate, they see someone that they think can beat Trump. And that is mostly what has them excited. He's no longer Joe Biden. There was doom and gloom. And now here is Kamala Harris. And I do agree. Like, I do think that she is tested. I've heard a lot that the American people don't know her. I do think the American people know her. I think that the American people nowadays are way more tuned into politics than they've ever been, especially with Twitter and really since just Trump. I mean, everyone is way more into politics. And so I think people do know her. I think they do know where she stands. I think that being branded with San Francisco is not a positive. Some people are saying like, oh, people don't care at San Francisco. I think that is just not good branding for yourself.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I think that
you live in New York, right?
I do live in New York. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's not that it doesn't matter. I just think that it's like on a practical level, when I had asked the speaker a few meetings ago, what does that really mean? I just think it's hard for people that are living in small towns or in the South. If they're not engaged, San Francisco liberal, it might be a bad thing, but I don't know that everyone can imagine it. And we hear a lot like California's on fire, everything's awful. And maybe it is, but just in terms of really understanding on a practical level what that means.
Well, I have family who lives in Texas and they talk about San Francisco. Like that is when COVID was happening and people from California were moving to Texas, that was their fear. They were like, we don't want their politics being brought here. And the same thing with Florida. Like, I know so many people who live, I have two of my best friends live in Sarasota, and their big
that's
fear,
where I am, Sarasota.
Yeah, and their big fear for both of them was they were like, okay, there's a lot of people coming here. We don't really have the infrastructure already to support all these people. And we think that their politics is going to change. And that's one thing, a credit I'll say about Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis barely beat Andrew Gillum in the election. And then he won by in 2018. In 2020, he won by millions of votes.
Hold on, guys.
I think
thank you. I want to bring in a new group, but I want to go around and ask you all. I want one word. Use your imagination. It's election day and your candidate's lost. So for William and Sharon, Harris is the president-elect. For Jessica and Edward, Trump, just one word about how you feel on that day when you got the results and the other candidates gone over 270 electoral votes. Okay, just one word how you think you'd feel. Edward.
Disappointed.
Okay. So Sharon.
I guess sad.
Okay. Jessica.
Despondent.
All right. And William.
I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked.
Okay. Thank you all. Great conversation. Going to bring in some other folks.
Thanks,
really
guys.
appreciate you making time and for the conversation. And I want to try regularly to try to get Trump voters and Harris voters to engage because that doesn't happen too many other places in America. Adam, come on in, please, and unmute yourself and let us know what's on your mind.
Hey, how's it going, Mark? Just real quick, appreciate you doing this. I've been a fan of yours for a little over 10 years. Well, I've been engaged in this for a week. I love this. Needs to happen more. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm in the T of Pennsylvania. I'd say I'm probably somewhere between a moderate and establishment Republican. On my local city council, served in my local county party previously. I missed the first part of what you might have talked about, so I just wanted to throw an observation that I've kind of seen and talking to a few people on the ground here about Shapiro. I don't know if it's being talked about or if it's being noticed, but I think there's probably a little bit more risk with him than what might be shown. Talking to some Democrats in the T, I think there's a sense of entitlement with him that he hasn't had to earn his career. He's really not tested, so to speak, in his progression in his political career. And then, I've recently kind of got a sense of when you look at PA voters and their decision on voting for a Harris ticket with him at the bottom of the ticket, is there a question or maybe a little bit of an early sense of concern of his lieutenant governor taking over, because he kind of fits that mold also of very young, not established, not tested. So I think that's going to be a dynamic that is going to be interesting should he get the VP nod.
Yeah. Adam, tell people what the T is because not everybody knows.
Oh, sorry. So the T is everything in between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So you look at the northern strip of Pennsylvania and then the central component. Once you probably get outside of, I'd say, like Lancaster, Bucks County, and the eastern side, and then
James Carville famously compared the T to Alabama, but only in the nicest way. Adam, who are you going to vote for in the presidential and in your Senate race?
Senate race, Dave McCormick. He was my guy 2 years ago. Presidential race, probably write somebody in. I struggle with both of them still.
Did you vote for Trump in 16 or 20?
I voted for Gary Johnson in 16 in the state of Maryland before I moved back to Pennsylvania. I voted for Trump actually in 2020. For me with Trump, it's a governance thing. And it's not even about, January 6th, any of that kind of stuff. The JD Vance pick really turned me off from a policy perspective. I don't really find myself gravitating towards a lot of the populist fever in the party. I think just with a lot of the narrative around former presidents not supporting Trump, Mike Pence not doing that, many of his cabinet people, that is a foundational thing for me that brings concern with Trump.
Adam, could Harris or Trump do anything to win your vote, or you're pretty much settled you wouldn't vote for either of them no matter what they did the rest of the way?
So it's really funny. I was talking with my neighbors here who are very, very staunch, and I will join the sass bandwagon to Mike. There you go. Trump. So it's really funny after the assassination attempt. Seeing a lot of the narrative coming out of the Trump campaign. I had about a 48-hour window where I was like, okay, if he's changed, if we start to see some movement a little bit different direction. Let's see who the VP pick is. There was a window there for sure. Vance kind of closed it for me. Now with Harris, I struggle with Harris. From policy perspective, different direction. I can't sit here and say that either direction policy wise are going to be fruitful in the long term for the country. I think the really big opportunity for her to really differentiate herself with voters like me is going to be kind of addressing that governance perspective, right? Vance is untested, so let's get a VP, pick a VP
Right.
who is the opposite of that.
Right. And
Bring
but Adam,
modern
it doesn't
pieces
sound it doesn't sound like if Harris chose Shapiro, that would win your vote from what you said. Is that right?
I mean, today, no. Today, no. I mean, I don't. I mean, Shapiro's doing a decent job as governor. He's got room to grow. And frankly, the Davis aspect makes me nervous, right? And that's no disrespect to him, but he needs some more experience to be the governor of Pennsylvania.
Okay, Adam, thank you.
Vice versa. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, Sharon or Janet, rather, unmute, please. Janet, unmute and let us know what's on your mind. There you go. All set.
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the media realize how people distrust them? Since they feel that
people on the left, people on the right, or everybody?
Both. And everyone in between. I talk to a lot of people. It's the way I was brought up. I'm 84 years old, and I've always paid attention to politics. I used to watch the conventions, the open conventions when I was a kid. But everyone I speak to, and if they don't want me to speak, they don't invite me to join them. I ask the question, and without a doubt, they all do not trust the media because they feel that they were lied to, that the media had to have known President Biden's situation.
Yeah, Janet, are you a Trump voter, Harris voter, or something else?
I'm in the middle, but I lean to conservative. Let me put it, I'm a social liberal, but I believe you have to pay for what you get.
Where do you live?
Right now I live in Florida, South Florida, but I'm a Bostonian.
Okay, and are you going to vote for Trump or Harris, or you don't know yet?
I don't know. This business with Vance bothers me because there are studies out there. Vance? Yeah, I don't know too much about him, okay? Yeah. Having said that, I listened to the clip that you showed. There is a problem in this country with families. I remember in 1970, my father came home and said, he said, I cannot give the Black people what they need. They need a strong father image. And he was right. Nobody spoke about it at that time, but it turned out to be true. And today you have children. A study was just done that children who grow up in families, I can't say normal, but in families, do better in life.
Yeah.
I saw that today, actually. Yeah. This bothers me. We have a truancy problem in this country.
Yeah. So Janet, on your question,
damn whether the kids go to school. Does the media realize what they're showing? How they're talking?
I'm in the business, and I'm extremely critical of people in the business, and I love hearing from people on the left and the right and the center about what a failure people are. You imagine if airline pilots or nurses or even store clerks were as bad as their job as so many people in the media are. So such a lack of fidelity to the first principles of the business. It'd be a disaster. And it is a disaster. So the answer to your question is, I think a lot of people in the media know that they're disliked, but I don't think they're introspective as to either why or how to correct it. And that, to me, from my entire career, has been something I didn't understand, because even just from a market point of view, You want to stay in business. You want to have customers. You should be responding to your customers' concerns. And if your customers, as Sanders supporters and Trump supporters think you're an absolute disaster at your job, probably should think about why they think that and try to do better. So I don't disagree with you. And I'm sorry to say that, although the press at this point knows that its members are not liked, they're not really doing much to correct it. And you see that today when there's lots of examples of bias across the board, and I wish it weren't so. We could do a show a day about this on Two Way, and we'd have probably more camaraderie and unanimity across the aisle than on any other topic.
I think so.
Because
that's what I found.
Almost nobody thinks the press is doing a good job, and I understand why that is.
And if the press doesn't talk about it, it's not going to go away. Now, you asked me who I would vote for. At this point, I really don't know.
Okay.
I have to look into Vance. I know what Trump is.
Yeah. I hope you don't take this overly personally, but I've seen two people in the chat want to hear about your skincare regimen. Are you wanting to give any tips about that?
Because I'm 84 years old. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is that just natural, or you got some tips?
Skin. I stay out of the sun, and I go to a great dermatologist and use her products.
All right. So there's 3 tips. Great dermatologist, stay out of the sun, and get Janet's grandmother. Those are the 3 things. Janet,
exactly.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. You're nice to join us. Thank you. All right. Blaine, come on in, please. Unmute and go ahead, please.
All right. Thanks for having me on. I'm enjoying this platform. I wanted to ask, and I want to be totally, upfront and saying I don't have a right to, I guess, talk from this perspective, because I'm looking at all the faces in this, and I don't see many black males in here in this deal. But I think the black male vote is going to be something that's going to be very interesting in this, because you talked about the kind of viral nature of the JD Vance deal. Well, there's also a viral kind of backlash going on some of the basically the appointment of Kamala Harris to the DNC, as the nominee. Even BLM is coming out against it, all that kind of stuff. And I'm seeing lots of black males, and I've reached out to a lot of black males to ask them about their thoughts on her being the candidate for the DNC, for the Democratic Party. Also, too, some of James Carville's comments that he goes on and talks about, because I watch not just Fox or CNN, I will try to watch everybody, and James Carville talking about how there seems to be a poor message going out of the Democratic Party to some males because of some of the social agenda that goes out towards that. I was just wondering your expert opinion on that, how you think I see anywhere from 15% on the low side to 22% of the black vote going for Trump in these polls. If that's even close to true, on top of 7 or 8% of where it was, then I don't see how we're talking about much of a race when it comes down to it, if he gets anywhere close to between 15 and 21%.
All right. Good question. I brought in 2 experts to answer. Hank Morris is a Democratic strategist. Alex Castellanos is Republican. Guys, what do you think about the black vote? And then I'd love for you to stick around and just talk about where you think the race is today. Alex, you first, please.
Well, I think Trump had been making some progress. I think there's an argument that, we saw Twitter explode after the attempt on his life, right? There were tweets out there that Trump is our first black president. He has the same forces that I think have disenfranchised a lot of young black men, are seen as the adversaries of Trump, the outsider. So I think he was making some progress there. And you see it when the outsiders start laughing at the insiders. Look at who all the outsiders are. There was movement. But now we again have the first, potentially the first female black president. Will Trump lose some of that? Maybe. But Trump's difficulties are not with so much with young white men, it's with young white women. There may be a similar split in the black vote. I think he's still culturally has some room there. And we're not talking about much, he only needs a few points there to crack the blue wall and make it very difficult for a Democrat to be successful. So it's something I'd keep an eye on. If young black men on Twitter keep laughing, Trump's got a shot.
Tank, what do you think about the black vote now that we've swapped out Democratic candidates?
So I think I agree with everything Alex said, but I'd layer on something else to it, which is Trump may do a little bit better with black men than last time, but I think the black turnout because of Harris will offset that. So if he gets 1% or 2 or 3% more from young black men, I think the number who turn out will more than offset that. But I agree with Alex. It's definitely something to watch.
All right. We've created an Insta panel here. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
One other thought for the Insta panel, that if he gets just a little bit of that, even if it is offset, it helps redefine Trump a little bit. He'll be seen as reaching across the 50-yard line, and that softens him and helps.
I don't agree with that in terms of you're thinking about softens him up for suburban women. I don't think that helps with that, particularly if Trump continues to act and behave the way he has. Trump can soften himself up, but it's not going to be by behaving the way he's behaved.
All right, we've lucked into just happening part of the two-way community, some of the smartest people I know. And I'm hoping you all can just kick it around and tell me where you think the race stands today. Ileana Johnson, one of the smartest people I know about America. Glad to have her here. Same with Brittany Prime, John Pedort, Stan Turntine. If you don't know who they are, Google them, but they're all really smart. Ileana, honored you were willing to unmute, and I'd love to hear just where you think the race is with less than a week into Harris versus Trump. Just what's your general sense of where things are?
Yeah, I like to lurk on these with my video off and muted and just listen. So I'll be brief. I think a few thoughts quickly. I think you're overstating the JD stuff. He would not have been my choice, but I think the cat lady, all of that stuff, I think it's more symbolic of why he was a bad pick, rather than terrible in and of itself. We're gonna move through the cycle, but it's symbolic of a lack of discipline. Why was he shooting his mouth off with Tucker in the first place? How good was the vetting really? And then I think the choice was made at a time when Trump was feeling really confident, and thinking of the politics should be addition, not subtraction. Why would you put someone on the ticket who's going to alienate people you actually need, which is people in my cohort who are, 40-year-old women who may or may not have kids. So think of it like that. But I don't think that one comment is, in and of itself, so bad. But again, his response is also indicative of why I think he was a pretty weak pick. Where does the race stand? I have a couple of questions. I have no idea. But my questions are, one, will the media start to scrutinize Kamala?
No, not
I have
anytime
no idea. Soon. I am skeptical. And the second is, as soon as Biden stepped aside on Sunday, all of the stories about Biden's age and acuity stopped, even though he's still the president. And I sort of wonder, are those stories going to pick back up? And will there be more scrutiny of this White House between now and November or January? I think those two things could play a big role, but the media's coverage of Kamala right now is, you've made this point, Mark, it's a big factor on her side, and I do wonder, like, how long can it go on? Apparently a long time, because it took 3.5 years for us to get real scrutiny of the Biden administration.
Right. And if it goes on for 3.5 months, she'll have a much better chance of winning. Brittany Prime, where do you think the race stands? And weigh in on the Vance thing. I always want to talk about the difference between what is and what ought to be. Maybe people think the Vance thing shouldn't be a story, but there are people who participated here and people in my inbox and on my feeds who say this is a big deal to them. So what do you think of Vance, and what do you think of the race overall right now?
I mean, I think people are underestimating. I'm an elder millennial. I think people are underestimating, and I'm a Republican, but not for Trump. Underestimating what the millennial generation feels. You know, I have children, but I've sat with friends crying over miscarriages and things of that sort. So, you know, even people with children, like Megan said, have that experience. So I think it's going to stick around. I think from his Megyn Kelly interview, I think he's going to keep doing this. So I don't think this is the last sort of foot and mouth thing. And Trump chose him as the future of the party. So I think a lot of women like me don't want that future for our party and are choosing this moment to stop it.
And how would you rate Harris's chances of winning at this point?
I think she has some work to do, but I think she's got, 40 to 45.
40 to
I want to
45.
see if she will, is she going to do anything to shift away from, the view of being a liberal senator? Will she lean into that? Will she commit to a bipartisan cabinet? I don't think, Commerce Secretary Romney changes policy, but it would show that she was trying, at least, especially for those kind of Trump tired Republicans who just need to see a little effort.
Yeah. John Podhoretz, comment on anything.
All right. So I think the Vance thing is very significant, much to my amazement, because I don't think vice presidents matter very much. But just as the deplorables remark or the 47% remark of Romney's had a kind of synecdoche effect because they connected to larger themes that were troubling to each party. Hillary, the elitist problem. Romney, the idea that the wealthy don't really understand the problems of ordinary people. The Republicans have a misogyny problem. They have a gender gap problem. And Vance's remark is like a thermonuclear bomb aimed at the heart of ordinary, conventional people who even if they don't have politics, as I think Brittany said, like have lived with difficulties relating to fertility. And what we really never know about this world in which it's now said 50% of people aren't going to have children is how much of that is by choice, because that is something people are not going to talk to pollsters about honestly or very deeply in their heart. Maybe it's that they can't find somebody. Maybe it's that they had an early abortion in their lives for reasons that we don't really understand and never got a chance to get pregnant again. It's not that they didn't want to have children. It's that life circumstances militated against it. And now there are many definitions of what it means to be a woman so that you don't need this.
And if I could add something on to that, John, also, Vance says that he's only talking to women who are childless by choice. That's none of his business.
Right.
Like,
and by the way,
why should that matter at all?
Also, he's talking to everybody. You don't get to pick how people, if you're a writer, you have to understand, you don't get to pick your audience. I mean, you do to some extent, but I mean, you don't get to pick how people react to what you write or what you say. You put something out there and then people react, and the reaction may be goosed by $100 million worth of advertising, but it has to connect to something that is already a problem. And Republicans have a problem with women, and Republicans have a problem with empathy toward the difficulties of women, let's just say, because they feel like the culture has tilted too much in favor of women. And that is actually a strong positive for Trump in the and the Republicans in the sort of the world in which people don't talk about what they're really talking about. But sounding heartless about childlessness is about as dumb a thing you can do politically as I can possibly imagine. And I don't think that that was Vance's intention. This is a complicated issue, but it happened, and it's there, and it's a big fat softball over the plate. And if he keeps doing what he did today, they're just going to keep pitching it to him, and he's just going to throw it at them, and they're going to knock it off the fence every time. I want to go. Thank you, John. I want to go to Dan on a different topic, and I don't want to spend any more time on this, in part because we've talked about it a lot lately, and I've taken a lot of heat for talking about this over lots of episodes. I will say, as everybody knows, I'm opposed to liberal media bias. I'm actually surprised at how little the Washington Post, New York Times, and the broadcast networks are covering this, given that they want to cover every negative story possible about Trump Vance, and given that this plays into themes that you would think they would be more into. So for me, this isn't about piling on Vance or Trump. And it's not to say that normally what vice presidential candidates talk about matter at all, because normally it doesn't. And it's not to say that I think candidates should be held accountable for everything they've ever said. None of those things are true. I just keep hearing from women about how emotionally upset they are about this. And I look at Vance, who didn't say, I'm sorry if anybody was hurt by what I said. I don't see why he wouldn't have said that. That's some sign of weakness or retreat. He didn't even say that, even though he must know how his words have hurt many, many people in the country. Ileana, did you want to say something? Yeah, John, and then Ileana, and then I want to go to Dan on a different matter. I just want to quickly jump in on Harris yesterday talking about her meeting with Netanyahu and Gaza and all of that, because we're talking about the things that connect. I'm talking about things that connect candidates to prior problems.
You want to switch entirely to the Middle East? Is that what you want to do?
Just for 2 seconds.
Okay. No, hold on. Ileana, do you want to talk about Vance? Or you didn't want to? I thought I saw you trying to get in. Okay.
I'm just laughing because the New York Times yesterday did run 3 pieces. One of them is an op-ed about the comment. 2 of which.
Oh yeah, but I thought they'd be leading the paper with.
Okay, fair enough. And then Politico magazine had I think it was the lead piece on their site where they had that big spread that was like JD Vance's women problem. Yeah. So and then the cables too are all over it.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's none, but I'm saying it's not like it's not the lead story on NBC Nightly News, for instance. I thought it would be, but yeah, I'm not saying there's none. John, hold on. I want to do the Middle East, but I just want to ask Dan a question because we're running against the clock. That's okay. Dan, what are you hearing about David Plouffe, about fundraising, about what's going on in Wilmington? You hearing anything?
Yeah, I mean, just the staff is as euphoric and excited as the rest of the party. I mean, they went from kind of a zombie campaign of like how many more days are left and let's just keep our heads down to kind of, they're giddy, their friends are giddy, like they feel like they have a purpose. They're sober, right? The map is still very hard. She still has no path. She's closer, but close doesn't, get you over the finish line. The David Plouffe thing I am hearing is real. Now, whether he does it or not, I've heard he's bored and he is very, very seriously looking at this. And, he knows Jen O'Malley Dillon. She worked for him. And so, whether it's him or not, I think there's a very distinct possibility he gets involved. I mean, just in general, like it is night and day. I mean,
Dan, they were giving us like hourly updates on the fundraising, and now they've stopped, and I can't get anybody to answer. Do you know anything about how they're doing both? I know the big checks are gangbusters, as I said top, but do you know anything about the online in the last couple of days?
Yeah, it's very strong. I mean, as I think I said to you, like they're not going to keep raising 100 million every 48 hours, but it's going to be good. I think it's probably settling down to where you would now expect a strong campaign to be. But they are doing very well. And, barring something crazy here, they're not going to lack for money the next month.
Right. All right. John.
Yes.
Launch with a few minutes ago, the simple topic of what you wanted to say about the Middle East.
Okay, so Kamala Harris made her first substantive statement about anything really yesterday, talking about her meeting with Bibi Netanyahu. And again, connecting to this question, which is not clear about whether or not she is encouraging ideas about her to fester that are not helpful. I think that that is the case. Now, I speak as somebody who is a deep ideological partisan on this matter and issue. I think Israel is in the right, and anybody who does not support Israel is in the wrong. So you're from
the Fetterman wing of the Republican Party.
That's right, and I am stipulating that as my prior. However, I do know that 60% of the country, in poll after poll for the last 9 months, supports Israel's efforts to extirpate Hamas. And she said, I want a ceasefire. I want you to stop this. I want you to, I will not be silent. The statement was in tone anti-Israel, even if it started with her saying Israel has a right to defend itself against terrorism, which, by the way, is a nonsense statement because every nation, including North Korea in some legal sense, has the right to defend itself against terrorism if you properly define terrorism as political violence against non-combatants and civilians. That is the classical definition of terrorism. And there is no state, including Russia, that doesn't have the right to defend itself against terrorism. So she's basically saying Israel has the right to breathe. Israel has the right to take in oxygen like all human beings. The question is, then she said, but it depends on how they do it. No, it doesn't. I'm sorry. Israel was attacked. Israel is fighting on a battlefield of Hamas's choosing that it's set up in an urban setting, not Israel. Israel doesn't want to fight in an urban setting. It's dangerous for its soldiers. And I think that the Democratic Party's traditional problem of seeming soft in foreign policy and soft on matters of terrorism and soft on values in some of this regard, on a matter that the American people are overwhelmingly in support of on one side because her party isn't, is not a good sign for people who think that she has crossover appeal. I still think that it's close to a jump ball election, but I'm looking to see what she's going to say.
What if she has a pro-Israel Orthodox Jew to the ticket?
Well, that'll mean something. I don't think that's going to happen, my friend. But for the very reason that the person who made that statement isn't going to be picking Josh Shapiro, because she's still worried about Dearborn, Michigan. She's still worried about uncommitted.
Yeah, Alex, did you want to say something as we close up here?
I wanted to ask the same question. What happens if she picks Shapiro?
Yeah, Commander-in-Chief of the Pennsylvania National Guard.
It'll help. She's
Right.
not okay.
Right.
I'm not gonna go out on a limb and say she's not gonna pick Shapiro, but I think she's probably not gonna pick Shapiro.
Okay.
I don't think the person who made that statement is gonna pick Shapiro.
All right. Thanks to everybody who participated, John, Dan, and Hank, Alex, and Brittany, and Ileana out of the shadows. I hope you'll come back. I hope we weren't I wasn't too presumptuous asking you to come on, but very grateful to everybody and everybody who asked questions earlier. We're not planning to see you this weekend, but if someone gives up their nomination, we'll certainly come back for that. And there are some pretty big rallies coming up, so I can't promise we won't do a little bit of what we call mystery political science theater around the rally tomorrow night in Minnesota. So stay tuned, watch your inbox, watch my Twitter feed. Otherwise, we'll be back 9:00 Eastern time on Monday for the morning meeting, and I suspect there'll be a lot to talk about. Thanks again. Have a great weekend if we don't see you, and we'll see you Monday morning.
Thank you, Mark.